I had learned early on that words could wound deeper than any physical blow. My parents didn't hit or yell. They had a more insidious way of shaping me. They told everyone I was born to serve, as if my purpose in life had been decided before I even took my first breath. Relatives, neighbors, family, friends, they all knew it. And somehow, in the quiet corners of my mind, I began to believe it too. Birthday parties, holidays, school events, any time there was an audience, they found a way to remind me of my place. At gatherings, my mother would whisper to cousins, "She'll always be the one doing the work, you'll see." My father would chuckle to his friends, "Born to clean, cook, and obey. That's our daughter." Their words were casual, almost joking, but I knew the truth behind them. At first, I tried to fight it. I would argue, deflect, or avoid the gatherings altogether. But no matter how hard I tried, their narrative followed me everywhere. Teachers, family, friends, even distant relatives seemed to accept it as fact. Every introduction, every comment, every sideways glance reminded me that my worth had been defined by their cruel framing. By the time I reached high school, I had stopped trying to correct anyone. It was easier to shrink into the shadows, to work quietly, and stay invisible. I focused on schoolwork, part-time jobs, and learning skills they would never value. I learned to cook not for compliments, but for efficiency. I learned to organize and multitask not for approval, but for myself. Every skill became armor, though I didn't realize it yet. Even in college, their voice echoed in my mind. "Born to serve," they said. It had become a refrain that followed me, almost like a song I couldn't turn off. And yet, something inside me refused to accept it entirely. Every late night studying, every extra shift at work, every small achievement whispered back, "You are more than that. You can be more than that." I didn't know how or when, but I vowed silently that one day, the world would see the real me, not the obedient, subservient child they had branded, but someone capable, strong, and respected. Someone who could stand tall in front of anyone, even the people who had once told the world I was born to serve. And that day, I would not shrink. After years of hearing the same cruel refrain, "Born to serve," I decided to stop trying to convince anyone of my worth, especially my parents. Their words had no power over me if I refused to let them. Quietly, I began building a life that they could neither control nor dismiss. I worked hard, not to prove them wrong, though that thought crossed my mind, but to prove to myself that I was capable of more than the life they had tried to dictate. I took odd jobs, learned new skills, and saved every penny I could. Each small success, each bit of independence, became a brick in the foundation of a life I was determined to create. College was my sanctuary. In classrooms and libraries, no one knew me as the obedient daughter, or the one born to serve. I was simply someone eager to learn, ambitious and focused. Late nights became my routine, studying, researching, working part-time to pay my way, and quietly carving out a future that my parents could never touch. Friends began to notice my determination. They encouraged me, celebrated my victories, and helped me realize something I hadn't dared to hope for. Recognition didn't have to come from my parents. It could come from people who truly saw my effort, my skill, my talent. Slowly, the voice that had echoed in my mind for years began to fade. I was no longer defined by their judgment. I was defined by what I built with my own hands. After graduation, I secured my first real job, a position where my abilities mattered, where I could make a difference. I worked my way up quickly, impressing colleagues and clients alike, not because I wanted revenge, but because I loved the work and wanted to excel. With every achievement, every successful project, every opportunity I earned, I felt the weight of my parents' words lifting just a little more. Even so, I never forgot them. Their cruelty had shaped me in ways both painful and powerful. It reminded me why I had to keep striving, why I had to remain unshakable in the face of judgment. I knew that one day, my life, my accomplishments, would speak for themselves. And I knew that when that day came, there would be no need for arguments, no need for explanations. The world would see me for what I truly was, a capable, strong, respected woman, born not to serve, but to thrive. Little did they know, that day was closer than they thought. The conference hall buzzed with activity. A sea of professionals exchanging handshakes, business cards, and smiles. I had prepared for this meeting for weeks, making sure every presentation was perfect, every detail polished. My biggest client, someone whose approval could change the trajectory of my career, was scheduled to arrive any minute. I adjusted my blazer, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that this was my moment. All those years of being dismissed, belittled, and told I was born to serve had led to this. I had built my skills, honed my expertise, and earned my place at the table. And now, the world would see it. When the client finally walked in, I felt a flicker of nerves, but it was different from the old fear. This was anticipation, excitement, a readiness to show my capabilities. I stepped forward to greet them with confidence, offering a firm handshake and a warm smile. "Thank you for taking the time," I said, my voice steady. "I've prepared a detailed plan that addresses every point we discussed. I think you'll find it aligns perfectly with your goals." They nodded, their attention immediately drawn to the work I had done. As we reviewed the presentation, I spoke with authority, explaining strategies, anticipating questions, and providing solutions before they were even asked. Their eyes widened in recognition. They hadn't expected such clarity, insight, or professionalism. Every question they posed, I answered with confidence. Every concern they had, I addressed decisively. Slowly, I noticed the subtle shift in their expression, a mixture of respect and admiration. It was clear they saw me, not the child my parents had ridiculed, but the competent, intelligent, and capable professional I had become. For a fleeting moment, I imagined my parents in the room, watching this exchange. Could they comprehend that the girl they had dismissed as born to serve was now commanding the attention and respect of one of the most influential people in my field? Could they grasp the irony, the poetic justice of it? By the end of the meeting, the client was smiling, nodding, clearly impressed. "This is exactly what we need," they said. "You've exceeded every expectation." And in that instant, I realized something profound. The approval I had longed for from my parents didn't matter anymore. I didn't need it. My talent, my skill, and my hard work had spoken louder than any insult or dismissal ever could. Finally, I was seen. Finally, I was respected. And finally, I understood the true meaning of triumph. A week later, the company hosted an industry networking event, a celebration of achievements and partnerships. I attended knowing that some of my extended family would be there. My parents, of course, had been invited, though I knew they'd never expected to see me thriving in a room filled with people they considered above my station. The night began as expected: laughter, cocktails, polite conversations. I navigated the room with poise, introducing myself confidently to clients and colleagues, exchanging ideas, and demonstrating the expertise that had taken years of hard work to build. I had no intention of making this a confrontation. It was simply a night for business and for showing the world who I had become. Then, I saw them. My parents, standing near the corner, whispering to relatives and glancing my way. Their eyes widened as they observed the energy, and respect I commanded. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father's hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie. For the first time in my life, I could see them confronted with a reality they had never imagined. And then, my biggest client approached, followed by several other influential figures I had worked with closely. I led them into a discussion about upcoming projects, strategies, and collaborations, speaking with authority and clarity. My parents could only watch as these professionals listened attentively, asked questions, and sought my input. Their admiration was evident, the kind of respect my parents had never granted me, the kind that validated every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of effort I had poured into building myself. I caught my parents' eyes across the room. Their expressions betrayed shock, disbelief, and, though they would never admit it, guilt. The room, filled with colleagues and clients, had witnessed everything. There was no room for excuses, no way to deny the truth. The girl they had called, born to serve, was standing tall, respected, and undeniably competent. Later, as the event concluded, my parents left quietly, their previous arrogance replaced by silence. I didn't need to gloat, didn't need to explain. The truth had spoken for itself. That night, I realized something essential. I had won not by confrontation or revenge, but by living fully, by excelling, and by showing the world the person I had always been. For years, they had tried to define me. For years, they had underestimated me. And for years, they had been wrong. Finally, they had to watch. And I had nothing left to prove.